And so when you go from a six-figure job to a minimum wage job, your status changes a lot. And that was tough for me. But I knew how miserable I was doing the thing that I didn't like. And I believed that this wasn't what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I knew that for me, this was a season of learning, not earning. And so I never thought I was going to be stuck at minimum wage. I just knew that I felt like I was just getting paid to learn. So I was like, I would pay to be here. So the fact that they're paying me is just a great deal for me. Because the thing is you compare yourself today at day 0, whereas what I left, I was probably at year 6 in terms of like all the things I did to get there. I had to prep for SATs to get into Vanderbilt, to graduate in 3 years, to be president and vice president of the powerlifting, president of the fraternity, and then do all the case study stuff so I could get the consulting job and did that for 2 years and then prep for the GMATs. Like I was 6 years into that career, but I started over at 0 because I just wanted something else. And all of you guys who are watching this right now, you're watching this personal brand being built and all this content that I'm putting out. I just learned this stuff like 2 or 3 years ago. Right now, I started making my podcast 6 years ago, but for 3 years, I didn't do anything else besides my podcast. But I didn't really go pro on making content until the end of 2019, 2020. I didn't know anything. And so I hired people and was like, hey, can you tell me? And they're like, you suck. And I'm like, yeah, I'm aware of that. And I told the first guy that I hired for YouTube, I said, I'm willing to do this for 10 years. And I was like, if it doesn't work after 10 years, I was like, I'll stop. And when we obviously took it in-house, he said on the way out, he was like, I just want you to know that you changed my entire perspective because I've never had a single person tell me that they were willing to wait a decade for something to work. He's like, every other person who comes to me is like, how do I get 100K subscribers in 90 days? And it's unsurprising now that we actually probably have a bigger subscriber base than anybody he'd ever worked with because we approached it differently. I'm just willing to suck because I believe that if someone else can get good at it, so can I. Number 3, this is probably the most important one. You are the niche. I want to be really clear. There's a difference between having a personal brand and building a brand in a business. Building a brand in a business is going to be around the products you sell and the avatar or the audience that you market to. So if you want to build content for a specific business that sells widgets, then it should be probably people using that widget within the context they would use it in. But you building a personal brand should be true to the person, just like you're being true to the product, and encompass all the things that you really are. What is Joe Rogan's niche? Is it politics? But then he does all this biohacking stuff. Oh, well, okay, was it fitness? Well, then he talks about aliens, like a lot. Okay, well, is it fighting? Because he's really deep into fighting. But he's also a big time stand-up comedian. Well, shoot, what is it? It's none of them and it's all of them. It's Joe Rogan. Because if I said all of those things together, hey, what big celebrity do you know who's into biohacking, aliens, politics, technology, fighting, and comedy? You'd be like Joe Rogan. Because that's his unique thumbprint. Now, all of those are different categories and in different proportions. So for example, he's got health and he's got comedy. Well, on his show, which of them takes up a greater percentage? Well, he probably talks more about biohacking and health and things that are going on in the total US around health compared to comedy. Now, he still has comedians on his show and talks about comedy stuff, but the proportion's different. So not only is it the number of categories, but it's the proportion between the categories that makes the unique thumbprint of the creator. Point being, if you're building a personal brand, speak to things that you know. And if you're like, well, I don't know very much, you start with the one you know, because you've lived your life up to this point and you've spent time one way or another, which means that there are things that are unique to you that you are deeper on than somebody on the street. And one of the hardest parts about this, and this is me just being real with you, is that if you know it really well, you actually assume everyone does. If you were raised around cars, for example, and your dad was a mechanic, or you just like love that stuff, you probably know a lot more about cars than the average person. I don't know anything about cars. I'm not really that interested in it. But there are people who are. And so you making content about the things that you actually care about, you will be knowledgeable. And there's a difference between telling people what they should do and sharing the things that you know. It's subtle, but one is preaching, one is teaching. And you want to be the teacher, not the preacher. I think one of the things that he has given me permission to do is talk about all the things that I'm interested in. Because I spoke to many people and they're like, dude, don't talk about your like death philosophy stuff. It's like really dark. And they're like, just talk about money stuff. But if you're gonna be talking money stuff, you should wear a suit because you wanna look that part. But I don't dress that way. I dress like this, but you're gonna look like a meathead. So then which of these things is Alex Hormozi? All of them, none of them at the same time. Your brand will be stronger based on how closely it matches who you really are and the things that you genuinely care about. And as those things change, so too should your brand to reflect that. Rather than say, oh, I had a mustache for 5 years, which by the way I did.